Good evening and welcome to the City of Helena City Commission Administrative Meeting, March 9th, 2022, 4 p.m. Welcome and thank you for participating in the City of Helena City Commission's administrative meeting. We are pleased to be able to provide this alternative meeting format in the city's effort to broaden public participation. Please be patient as we may experience technical difficulties during the meeting. We welcome your public commentary. Please read the following tips and guidelines for the app usage and your participation. This meeting is called to order. Madam Clerk, would you take the roll, please?
Interim City Attorney Coate.
Here.
Interim City Manager Joden.
Here.
Commissioner Dean.
Here.
Commissioner Fever.
Here.
Commissioner Reed.
Here.
Commissioner Logan.
Here.
Mayor Collins.
Here. Thank you. Commission comments or questions, discussion? Moving along. Recommendations from Helena Citizens Council, Patricia Beek. Madam Clerk, do we have Ms. Beek on in there?
Mr. Mayor, I apologize. I don't see anyone by that name in our attendees this evening.
Thank you. City Manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Moving right along. 3 items to report on the solar panel project. I think Commissioner Dean asked about this at the last admin meeting. Staff has met. The site has been determined and approved. The solar panel array will be out at the vehicle maintenance shop at Fleet Services off of Bozeman. You'll recall that Northwest City did get a grant from Northwest Energy from the E+ Renewable Energy Program. The total project is estimated for the new commissioners at about $90,000 to $100,000. So we have a $50,000 match with about $10,000 contingency. Staff is working on the bid packet now, aiming for a March 16th opening. Advertising on March 16th, opening on April 5th, and depending on the time for bid review and the applicant's timeframe, hoping to enter into a contract by April 19th with a project completion by the end of September of this year. I can answer any questions on that, Mayor, Commissioners.
Comments or questions for Interim Manager Jordan?
Mr. Mayor.
Please go ahead.
Mr. Joden, thank you for that update and providing those dates as well. I'm wondering if we can just maybe make a note, I don't know, maybe in May or June, just to get an update to know if we're on track for that September date or not. I'm very, very excited about this, and it's cool to see, something that we've budgeted for a project like this actually come to fruition. So I'm very thrilled. And also thanks to the shop for being willing to host it.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioner Dean, I will put it on the placeholder list so that the long-term city manager long-term interim city manager can be aware of it and be prepared in May or June.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan.
The second thing I wanted to update the commission on is the work that city staff has been doing on its special events and alcohol permits. Staff has been working with interested stakeholders to revise its permit application form from suggestions that we received. Those include links to city code sections within the application so that those who are interested in applying can read what the requirements are, links to other related associated permits such as a noise permit and clarifying what amplified sound means, including a contact for staff to assist and guide the applicant on traffic control measures, and then defining what a licensed establishment means, given that's a relatively technical legal term in state statute, means a bar or any place licensed to have alcohol. We're still working on consolidating a couple of applications for events. What am I thinking of? One out of HPD is still in conflict with the overall permit. We're going to consolidate those. We still have had a little bit of issues that we're working through with recent events and the application. I think those issues highlight the need to be clear that the applicant needs to be clear about what they are doing on the application rather than relying on verbal representations and getting in confusion with that. A recent event had open burning on the street and sidewalk, and it wasn't clear from the application that is what was being requested. So there was confusion among staff and the participants of the event as to what was and was not permitted. Finally, there were requested changes in the comments that would require city code changes. And to date, my understanding or my impression is the commission hasn't been willing to do so. The biggest one there is basically allowing an undelineated area in which to consume alcoholic beverages in a certain area. Most suggested is downtown. That is an issue for events like the art walk or the former felons ball, where the applicants want to allow people who are visiting licensed establishments to leave and walk on the sidewalks with alcohol, but not necessarily close streets or delineate an area for it. The commission hasn't expressed direction to eliminate that requirement. And then we still have the difficulty of acquiring insurance to protect the city for that, because the licensed establishments, based on their regulations from the state, don't necessarily want their patrons leaving and incurring liability and or providing insurance for other licensed establishments. So it's not necessarily entirely a city issue that we can fix through our permitting process, but it still is a requirement of city code. We are, I believe, imminently close to issuing a permit for the Pride events later this summer. We're working with the applicant to purchase insurance that meets the city's requirements, and then the permit will be issued. I can answer any questions on this topic before moving forward, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. Comments or questions for Manager Jordan? I see Commissioner Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Jordan. Just a question to make sure I understood procedurally. With the upcoming permits and ones that we are working through, if there is an issue with a permit and some sort of conflict, or if I understood correctly, lack of direction comes up, would it be then that specific permit would be brought before the commission so that we can give direction or clarify things? How would that work from a process standpoint to make sure that we're helping eliminate any unnecessary barriers? Thank you.
Yeah, Mayor, Commissioner, I think if there are issues with a particular permit or the details of a permit, staff will certainly do its best. I think we probably want to avoid the commission getting into the details of the permit. One, so we don't have that confusion between three parties as to what is or is not being requested. But in terms of if the application still requests something that's not allowed by city code, obviously there is no variance or deviation procedure or authority for the city manager to grant a waiver of that, I should say. Although at this point, given the way the time it takes to get an ordinance change, it's getting pretty close to change anything, before June, so to speak, or so to say.
Sorry, if I may just clarify one more thing. I thought I heard you say, but please correct me if I'm wrong, that there was an area where there was a lack of direction. Did I understand that correctly?
Maybe I'm
Okay.
not understanding. In
Okay.
terms of direction from the commission, no. The commission, at least over the last several years, has heard multiple requests to basically allow open containers downtown, which would eliminate the barrier fencing requirement. And the commission has not expressed instruction to pursue that.
Commissioner
Thank you for
Fever.
that clarification.
Okay, thanks, Commissioner Reed. Commissioner Fever, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. For the city interim city manager, so Thomas, everything seems to be going appropriately forward with the Pride Parade application.
Yes, that's correct, Commissioner Fever. I was in contact with Mr. Ham this morning about completing the insurance and working with city staff to get that processed. If the commission will remember, there was a part of the budget. I can't remember the exact amount, but there was budget, I guess, a grant for Big Sky Pride to purchase or to assist in purchasing insurance. And so we're just closing the loop on that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that very much.
Mr.
Any
Mayor.
others? If not, please continue, Mr. Jordan.
Mr. Mayor.
Go
Nope,
ahead,
you're good.
Commissioner.
I was just gonna say it was $1,000 to support Pride.
Go ahead, Mr. Jordan. Thank you, Commissioner Dean.
The last item I have, Mayor, Commissioners, is just seeking direction on a potential strategic planning session related to the budget. My understanding is that the previous city manager did not intend to review or update the existing strategic plan, and that we would be proceeding with the budget process with that in mind, those three areas. Obviously, city staff, finance staff still has several questions, policy questions that we will need to go through, but those don't necessarily aren't or will not be determined by a strategic planning session. The concern is that if we update or change or amend the strategic planning document at this point, it may be too late, given that budget worksheets and personnel requests have already gone out to staff. And if the strategic plan were to change, staff would have to revise that. And we're getting pretty late in the budget process to potentially change course. So I wanted to get guidance so we can help the finance staff and the directors orient themselves properly.
Do we have any comments or questions for Mr. Jordan? I see Commissioner Dean.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I guess this, what I'll say is that, and this is, Thomas is the messenger. Mr. Jordan is the messenger here, I know. I'm really bummed that the timing has worked out like this. I think that all of us, the last time we had a discussion about strategic planning, it was at orientation, and it seemed that there was, overwhelming support to have a strategic planning session that we could also start engaging in annually. That last year we set the stage by establishing our strategic outcomes. I still think that that's a really important part of moving forward, having forward movement. as an organization. I know that obviously clearly time is the issue now for staff, and I don't want to get in the way of the budget being put together. For what it's worth, I would really like to see a line item in our budget for strategic planning on an ongoing and annual basis. I know that that has been part of the discussion literally for the last year, that we would continue to do this annually. So I am disappointed that we're not there. I know that it's not something that I know that this is not a interim city manager problem. So this is not directed at you, Mr. Doden, at all. But I do wish that I wish that we could have moved on that. But I do very much believe that we should implement it to be happening annually moving forward.
Commissioner Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would also agree with Commissioner Dean that it should be an annual exercise. And more specifically, if I heard in the beginning, I think you suggested that, were you proposing some sort of session with finance because there were unanswered policy questions related to the budget now?
Mayor Collins, Commissioner Reed, that's correct. And Sheila and I are working on building those questions within the existing budget process, budget calendar that we have set up to work through with the commission.
So are you seeking direction on whether or not we would want to schedule a special session related to those questions?
I don't think so, not at this point, Commissioner Reed. Just to clarify that we think it's too late to review the strategic planning document at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions for Acting Manager Jordan? Go ahead, Commissioner Reed. Commissioner Fever, I apologize.
That's quite all right, Mayor. Thank you very much. So, interim city manager, when is the best time in your judgment for this annual meeting, the strategic planning meeting?
Not being a budget process expert, but just based on, I guess, my years of going through them, I think, and Sheila can correct me if she thinks differently, but sometime in the fall, before staff starts to think about what their personnel requests might be, what our salary philosophy might be, so that staff can coordinate with the policies and goals and plan of the city commission.
Well, make a note of that, and I hope that, Mayor, that we can work forward to achieve that agenda. I'll be frank, I feel like I don't really have a real good picture of what's going on. And maybe that's because I'm the newest of the new here on this commission. And I just feel like there's almost got to be more opportunity for us to meet as a group with staff to talk about how we move this agenda, this city forward. Thank you very much.
Okay, Commissioner Logan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too kind of bummed that we are not having the opportunity to have a strategic planning session. And I know there was talk of it during the orientation, and I thought it had value previously, last January. And I looked forward to sort of getting a feel for the strategic priorities that our new colleagues have. And but I think the reality is, not going to happen this year, but possibly this fall. So thank you, Mr. Jordan, for the update on that.
Thank you.
That's all I had, Mayor, Commissioners.
Do we have any comments from the public on this topic? Madam Clerk, would you search to see if we have any raised hands?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I have no hands raised and I've received no written public comment.
Thank you. Department directions, feedback, transportation system, custody discussion. Director Kanopke or Mr. Jordan? I don't know who's heading it, but hey,
Mayor,
take it away.
Yeah, David, Director Kanopke is going to lead the discussion, just continuing the discussion, but more from the city's perspective on the Custer Avenue project, and maybe hopefully getting some guidance on how staff should proceed with MDT.
You have the floor, Director Kanopke.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners, and Interim City Manager. I'll share my screen. I got 6 or 7 slides just to help us with this discussion. I'll take a minute to recap where we were with the joint meeting, and that where we there was a lot of information brought forward from MDT, and some of it may or may not have resonated. So I felt that if we could maybe have a little bit more informal, in-depth discussion today, it might help clear up some issues or direct us in the right direction so that we can work with MDT to try to make this project happen. So did my slides advance there for everyone?
Yes, sir.
So, you know, what does it boil down to for Custer? There's two perspectives of, you know, reducing congestion, but as you see on my slide here, that's the last one. Really, it's about safety. It's about safety for the pedestrians that are going to be using that corridor. It's about safety for the bicyclists using that corridor, and it's about safety for the traffic and traveling public using that corridor. And how can we accomplish this? So what I propose is that we use a focus on safe movement of people, bikes, and cars. Pedestrian facilities are planned for both sides of the roadway right now. That's a shared use trail on the south side and sidewalks on the north side, which currently the trail does reside on the south side of Custer, but there are no pedestrian facilities on the north side. We need to include highly visible and enhanced crosswalks at strategic locations on Custer to provide safe crossings for the children that use Fort Georgians, other pedestrians that use that facility, and just the general users of that area. Boulevards and bulb outs, all of these, the lane widths, that's the intentional traffic calming that we want to use. And that's directly comes right out of our complete streets policy for the city. Having those boulevards, those trees, narrowing those lane widths to induce traffic calming. So those are some of the things, and the picture to the right there, that was taken by the IR during before one of the public meetings. And that's what we want to get rid of, is having that many vehicles with those pedestrians and having potential negative interactions. Another goal is we want to, improve the experience for everyone that uses that corridor, not just the pedestrians or bicyclists or the everyday user, but also those who travel to Helena for events. That corridor is used extensively in the summer, in the fall, and in the spring for numerous sports activities, events at the fairgrounds, and we want to make sure that experience translates to all users of that corridor. The last two is use the existing right-of-way as efficiently as possible to minimize impacts to adjacent property owners. Right now, with the feasibility study, as MDT has related, we can fit their proposed section within the existing right-of-way. Does that mean that we're not going to impact adjacent property owners? No, we're probably going to impact them, whether it's just through the construction, or as everyone that's driven through there are some steep driveways that may be impacted, but those would be mitigated to the benefit of the property owner, to make sure that they're not impacted to the point where it's just undesirable for them. And then the last one is to reduce congestion. That was one of the primary driving forces behind that, because of the cars, as you see in that picture. But reducing congestion also reduces, our emissions. It reduces commute times for those. And with that school right there, during the peak times can be very difficult for school buses, parents, or anyone traversing that corridor. So funding, right now, it is pretty much matched by the urban funds. The urban funds do not require any match. Those are funds directly allocated to the urban area, which includes Lewis and Clark County area and East Helena, but those do not require a match. As one of the stumbling points that we had prior to this is that the city's on the hook for any overages because it's in our jurisdiction. Those would be the only costs that may be incurred by the city. But as we discussed in the MDT presentation, that technical design committee, that would be one of their top goals is to make sure that the roadway comes in on time and on budget, and to mitigate some of these costs. And some of those costs are right now in that cost estimate are risk. Right now it's just past the feasibility study portion, so there's a fair bit of risk built into that cost estimate that MDT provided. Right away, like we said, no additional right of way is anticipated at this point. There's a couple caveats to maintenance responsibility. Right now, the current maintenance responsibility for Custer from Montana to Green Meadow is MDT. They would do the routine maintenance, the snow plowing, the sweeping, the general maintenance of the roadway and its features. Those non-roadway features, trees in the median, benches, workout, stuff along the trail, those would be the responsibility of the city because those are non-roadway features that MDT does not maintain per our agreements with them. Considerations, we're going to meet MDT and FHWA's applicable requirements. We're going to meet city code, city engineering standards, fire code, and any other applicable codes. And that's making sure that we can collaborate in between would be another function of the TDC. And support. When MDT first started this project, they did a pretty big public campaign where they had 19 different meetings, and through those meetings, the majority of people supported the project for numerous reasons that I won't get into right now, but we can, if we need to, provide the public meeting comments to the commission. And the other one is staff supports the project as it is a need to improve this corridor and access to other areas of the city. 10, 15 years ago, Custer was kind of seen as the border between the city and the county. Well, now the city has expanded past Custer, and now it's an integral part of the city, and it is an integral east-west connection for the city. My next slide, what we don't want. This is kind of what I heard at the joint commission meeting is we don't want to see a bunch of asphalt or concrete with cars, wide crossing sections. We don't want the highway field. So, what do we want? These are a couple examples that I went out and found of other cities that have done similar projects. The top one here in the top left, that is a 4-lane corridor section with a planted centerline median down it. The lower right one, I didn't have a chance to redo this rendering, so please excuse the parking on the right side of the rendering, but this, could be something that we could do. We could have those left turn lanes there in those strategic locations, and then we could remove them basically and put a median in there with either plantings or art or what have you, but putting boulevards to the extent possible on both sides with tree plantings, narrowing the lanes from, the 12-foot that's proposed to, as narrow as 10.5 feet. And with that curbing, with that median and the curbing on the edges there, that's that induced traffic calming, which has the effect of slowing people down. As this slide, that graphic says, the trees create a sense of enclosure, they provide shade and discourage speeding. Obviously, we would be strategic on that because of the, we don't want to plant a bunch of evergreens on the south side. So during the winter time, it gets shaded, and then we have a bunch of ice on that south side there. So we'd be strategic on what trees we plant and the spacing so that we can optimize the sun in the winter time and still have, a treed corridor. Again, landscaping makes the roadway more attractive. It reduces the feel of a highway, and I guess in my opinion makes it feel more not like a neighborhood street, because this really isn't a 4-lane facility, really doesn't feel like a neighborhood street, but we can make it look and feel a little bit more like what we're hoping for. What we could try. So the upper left slot picture there, those are actually, that red line there is projection, LED projector onto the roadway to help pedestrians know, basically, or cars know when to stop, when pedestrians can go. So as everyone knows, in the wintertime here, we get to, during those times, our crosswalks are covered up.
Right.
This would be a visual indicator for everyone of when to stop and when to go. The lower left one, I put this in here because it's a neat concept. I don't know how durable it would be in the city of Helena with our plowing, but that's actual paint that gets painted on, and it absorbs the UV during the day, and at night this is what you see. So it delineates those trails a little bit. I can see this being used in climates that have a little less snow than us, but it's also one of those innovative ideas that we just need to think outside the box and try some new things here. The upper right picture of that crosswalk, that's a 2-lane facility with a rectangular rapid flash beacon with a refuge island in the middle. Those RRFBs are pedestrian actuated, so they won't be sitting there flashing all the time. When people needed to cross, they would push the button, they would activate. Drivers would see the activated signal or flashers and yield where they at the appropriate areas. We have installed some of these throughout the city over the past few years and have seen very good compliance with these. Most of you probably have seen the ones on Benton. They are very effective, and we're planning on installing in other areas of the city this spring and summer. The bottom right photo is what's called a HAWK, a high intensity activated crosswalk. So that middle graphic is what pedestrians do or what they see and what they do, and drivers what they see and what they do. And basically this is just an enhanced RRFB, but it does bring more lights. It gives a chance to slow down, prepare to stop for the pedestrians, and then stop and proceed with caution. The pedestrians also get, cues of press the button to cross, stop and wait, you're good to cross, and then, you have a countdown timer to finish crossing. So those are a couple enhanced crossings that I think, so the Hawks are used by MDT in locations throughout Montana. So they were also starting to use the rectangular rapid flash beacon. The latest one they've actually installed is up on 11th Avenue at Sanders there by the Capitol Mall site. So those are being used by MDT. So I do not see that those are big asks or something that way out of left field that MDT would not, think is appropriate. And as you can see, we can do a lot with those refuge islands to provide that safety. And, you know, if you didn't get across in time, there is that refuge there and that protection by the curb. So with that, I am going to end this. So you can ask me questions or have comments, and I'll be happy to answer those if I can. And if not, I will definitely get you answers back as soon as I can.
Thank you, Director Kanopke. We appreciate this presentation. At least I know for me, it brought some clarity. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Commissioner Fever. You are muted, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate your telling me I'm muted. It would be useless to talk and not be able to be heard. Anyway, having said that, this project has been on the table like forever. So why is this idea that you've just presented better than any idea before that apparently the commission hasn't bought into? I mean, there's a long history here I know nothing about. And perhaps, David, you can help me on that.
Mayor, Commissioner, I can't speak for why, the reasons why the commission hasn't proceeded with this project earlier. I just tried to hear what the concerns were, and you know, for the longest time, the concerns were safety, the 5 lanes. It's going to look like you know, a superhighway or another Montana or Euclid, and I just wanted to. I know that there are these options out there, and you know, other cities are trying other things that are outside the box that aren't in our toolbox, and I just wanted to be able to visually bring these to you so that you could see some of the concepts that we could, as you know, members of the TDC, introduce. And you know, I've sent both that section that had the 5 lanes with the 2-way left turn lane and the medians there to MDT prior to this, just to get their reaction. And I didn't get an outright no, and I did get a, you know, I think that's something that we could work towards. So, you know, that's encouraging. I think, Commissioner Fever, just for history, I think there's been some changes at MDT that may be allowing us a little bit more flexibility now than we had maybe three years ago. So I can't answer your question directly. I do think that this corridor is important. I think we can make it work so it's safe for everyone. And I think we can work very hard on making it look and feel like a neighborhood, you know, esque roadway, and make it a hallmark of not only Helena, but what we can do in cooperation with MDT.
Thank you, Commissioner. Director Kanopke. Mr. Jordan?
Yeah, Mayor Collins, Commissioner Fever, I would also add that as we've worked through this, the last iteration, the city got a project agreement from MDT that I think unanimously on the city side was unacceptable to the city, especially in terms of the costs that the city would incur and not be able to control those costs in terms of design. And so that was cause for moving forward. And so this was the next step after MDT heard those concerns and go back. And as David stated, you know, with the league working with MDT to sort of change how they view urban or routes, MDT routes through urban areas and cities and towns, and updating the lag manual. I think we can get to a place where the designs of these roads will be more palatable to local jurisdictions, including the City of Helena and the Custer Avenue project.
Well, I'm very pleased to hear this discussion, because I think the road needs to be completely rebuilt, redeveloped for a whole lot of reasons, not all the ones that you've already represented, but also as we look at the Redeemer Lutheran property and we look to how we bring, if you will, new residences and new cars into the flux of things getting into and outside of, you know, the boundary of Custer Avenue. I we clearly have some work to do ahead of us, and we need to do it expeditiously. Just one specific question, David, because I really like your presentation. Not to say that you didn't show me where the bike lanes were, but I'm assuming there are bike lanes on both sides of this this proposal as you would see it going forward.
So the bike lanes would be on the shared use path on the
Right.
south side, where we'd have a dedicated 10 or 11 foot path there that could be used by both pedestrians and bicyclists.
I do know that bike lane. I have, if you will, ridden my bike on it many times. And it's a very small thing, but I hope as well, it's not so small to a bicyclist. As you come off the interstate, as you come over the top of the interstate on the Custer Road, and you plow into Helena, you hit Montana Avenue, and that bike lane stops right there. I mean, it ends right there. And the first time I did that, I thought, well, that's really pretty interesting. I made a hard right turn on the Montana Avenue and then learned how to go around, if you will, the big box stores in order to cross Montana Avenue. You still have an issue of crossing Montana Avenue and getting to that path, if you will, the bike lane that you propose. I hope you can work something around as you think about this conceptually, where we would go with this, that will not be such an abrupt end to the bike lane that already exists on Custer Avenue going east and connected to Custer Avenue going toward Benton Avenue. I think that it will be critical. Keep it in mind, Custer Avenue is, even right now, and with that bike lane, the only way you can get across town, left to right or east to west, on that end of our city. And so I think that is a critical component of your design as you go forward. Thanks.
Commissioner Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Director Knopke. Just a procedural question. I appreciate the presentation. It seems like we have some forward motion. What would the process look like from today to actually begin to move this project forward? Can either you or Interim City Manager Joden help explain to us what the next steps look like and what that timeline could look like? Thank you.
Mayor and Commissioners, the next steps really are, the project is programmed in with MDT. They had submitted to us, because it is programmed, an agreement to where since we are the jurisdiction that it primarily falls in, that it's the agreement with us. And the sticking point the last time that they gave us that agreement was the cost, the overruns. I think what didn't come out of that was the amount of risk that is already in their cost estimate, the contingencies that are in there. And we did talk about the TDC, but not to the extent that we have been now, where MDT has stated that it's going to be one member of MDT, one member of FHWA, and 2 members of the city. And that committee starts at the signing of the agreement to the end of the project, and their job is to make sure that the interests of the city is protected while still accomplishing the goals of MDT and FHWA. So long and short, the next steps are to get any direction that you may have, or to answer any further questions that the commission may have. And then if we satisfy those questions, or we get that concurrence from MDT, then the next step would be they would propose the new agreement. We would commit to using the urban funds. And right now, the cost estimate was, we had $20.4 million, I think, with the borrow in urban funds, and the current estimate is $20.7 million. So that does leave a $300,000 overage for the city to cover. I'm not entirely convinced that we can't eliminate that overage just by looking at design details within the design. As Commissioner Dean asked in the last meeting, Are some of these enhanced pedestrian things already figured in? Yes, they are. Whether we use a traditional curb that might use 24 feet of curb and some sidewalk, we're putting a bulb out in, we add another, 6 or 10 feet of curb and a little extra sidewalk. Those are all in those contingencies. I believe that we can make some of these enhancements a reality and move forward in a judicious manner so that we can watch those costs. And, we might not get the platinum, paving or whatever. And we just, we have to make sure that we fall in line with our fiscal responsibilities, and just go from there. So the next step after that long diatribe, Commissioner Reed, is the agreement.
Thank you. Commissioner Dean.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. First, Director Knopke, thank you. I know that this is like, I never thought Custer would make me happy, but this is actually making me feel the best that I've felt in any of the Custer conversations. So thank you. One thing, and I don't know if you would have this answer right now, so if you don't and you have it later, it'd be fine. But I'm interested to know, with those, like, say 10.5-foot lanes, do we have kind of like a range of what we think the average speed would be? Obviously, we know people don't necessarily follow the speed limit. They drive in a manner which will mitigate their risk. So if they have lots of room to go really fast, they do. If they have less room to go fast, they don't. The other thing that I think Commissioner Fever brought up a really good point in terms of the Our Redeemers project and any additional development that's going to be happening north of Custer. It's going to be a ton more kids walking across the street, riding their bikes across the street, getting to Fort Georgians. And that is something very much, I think, that we need to keep at the forefront. So really appreciate you including some of the options that, we should maybe be considering. The other thing I wonder if you maybe could touch on, and if this is a conversation for a later date, that's fine. But I'm wondering, like, with the TDC process, if that's the way we go, or if we have the opportunity to figure out what kind of modified procedure looks like with the conversations with the league, how much discretion or ability do you think we might be able to have in, for example, like managing the process? Because it really isn't that much road. It's like it's like a 1 mile street that we're looking at. And I know that your department and the city is actually very good at keeping our costs pretty reasonable when it comes to really great infrastructure development. So I'm wondering if this is not the time to talk about that, cut me off, but I'm just anxious to hear your thoughts on that too.
Mayor, Commissioner, Commissioners.
Short version.
Yes. As interim city manager proposed the last time, that this would be a project that we would propose to not only the league, but the MDT as a pilot project to work out some of those kinks on the new lag process. We used to do CTEP projects, not on this scale, but it was same requirements where we had to control the money, we controlled the projects, and we delivered and made sure that they met those requirements. So yes, I think that there's a possibility. There might be some additional conversations outside of this meeting to try to get MDT on board with that, but I think it's a possibility, and then yes, I think we could do it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Logan. You're muted. Oh, go ahead.
Yep, I'm working on it. I forgot my question. Actually, just kidding. So Commissioner Reed asked Mr. Knopke about next steps. And it sounded like, if I heard correctly, an agreement needs to be approved. How do we get there? What's the what's the next step in the decision-making process?
Mayor,
I thought
sorry, Mayor.
no, I was just saying, I thought we had to just agree on what was presented to us. And then they'll take it to MDT. If I'm wrong, please correct me, Mr. Kanopke.
We would just have to tell MDT that we're willing to sign the agreement. They would update the agreement. We would get that. It would be reviewed by the attorney's office and transportation. And then if it was acceptable to everyone, we'd sign it, and then the project would get going. Short version.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments on this topic?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I do have a couple of hands raised. First up is Katie Potts.
You have the floor, Katie.
Mayor Collins, I think I've accidentally raised my hand. I didn't mean to. Apologies there.
That's okay.
I
And
can't
who's
get
this-
these hands right today.
Okay, who's the next one? Clerk Claiborne.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I do have James Servo.
You have the floor, James. James gone again.
Hello, can you hear
Yes,
me?
you have the floor.
Hello, Mayor and Commissioners. Yeah, I would like to just give my input with it. Like I said, I think along with the other commissioners, that this plan seems to be much better than what's been previously submitted. I think the ideas of reducing the lane widths are good. We should design it so that the speeds driven is what the road is designed for. Sorry, I've got my daughter here. And then I don't know if we can incorporate roundabouts and restrict access so that we wouldn't need left-hand turns. So if we had 2-lane roads with right hands only or a roundabout to get back to the other side. And then with that, those pedestrian islands to help keep community access for cyclists and pedestrians across this road. And then lastly, I think with that multi-use path, the research that I've seen, like the NACTO, the National Association of City Transportation Officials, would suggest a 12-foot width lane for ease of use. So thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, do we have any others?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, next I have an individual listed as M. Milton. I'd ask them to please list their full name for the record.
Thank you. Would you list your full name, M. Milton, please?
Yeah, this is Max Milton. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. I come into town on Green Meadow, so I drive on Custer quite a bit. And I guess when they did the questionnaire a few years ago, I was curious, and I looked at the project then. I've been tracking the county's zoning advisory panel for its whole time, and I'm very interested and concerned about how the city and county are going to integrate their infrastructure expenditures to, get us good outcomes in the next 10 years with how we grow out to the north. So I'm curious about this project, and I went to the Chuck Marone presentation, Strong Towns speaker, who talked a lot about road design and some of the things that have been mentioned today, which had a lot to say about infrastructure and I guess desirable communities. So I'm glad that you're talking about that, and I guess I can't really tell from the presentation if we've gone far enough in looking at all the options for both, dealing with this crosstown, road or street, and there's a lot of pedestrian use of that area, so it's a critical mix. And I think I've heard everybody say they don't want what we've gotten in the past, are these big boulevards that are really car friendly and people unfriendly. So I have noticed driving in town that it seems like people's yards have been moved back. So I'm wondering, fellow from MDT, are they already doing some right-of-way adjustments there between? Because I just saw there's been a lot of fences moved back about 5 feet on the south side between Benton and the high school. So I don't know what that's about, but anyway, those are my comments. Thanks for giving me a chance to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Milton. Madam Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I have no other hands raised at this time, and I see no written public comment.
Thank you. The next thing here is review of the agenda for next commission meeting. Please contact Danae if you want to know what's up for the next meeting. If there are any public comments, anybody from the public wishes to address the commission on any topic, please raise your hand. Madam Clerk, do we have any raised hands?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I have no hands raised and no written public comment.
Okay, we can always come back. Commission discussion and directions to the interim city manager, Mr. Jordan.
Yeah, Mayor, just to answer Mr. Milton's question, the fences being moved on the south side of Custer are a result of the Yellowstone pipeline enforcing their easement rights to move the fences out of their easement right of way. You'll remember a few months back, the commission similarly approved an easement amendment with Yellowstone pipeline along the golf course, and that fence will also be moved back 10 feet. In terms of direction to myself, I will get an update in May or June scheduled on the calendar for the solar panel project out at the Fleet Services building. And then we will build into the budget process for FY24 a strategic planning session in the fall of this year for the next budget.
Okay. Commission discussion and direction. Do you have your directions, Mr. Jordan?
Yes, Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any final comments from the commission? Any final comments from the public? Well, thank you and have a great day. This meeting is formally adjourned.